Consider this a professional courtesy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a 2018 edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I remain the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. So much has happened since the last time we spoke. I hope all of you had a fantastic Thanksgiving and an amazing Christmas and an amazing New Year. A lot of different things happened with me. Well, maybe I'll bring you up to date on a few things that kind of hit major headlines during that time. Been a lot of downtime here at the show, which got exacerbated by a couple of things, which we can talk about in a second. But I thought now would be a good time to sit back and kind of look back on 2017, because this is the time, right? We're starting off a new year. And there's nothing better than looking back, figuring out what went right? Hopefully, we're starting off each year with a set of goals. Now, I did not reach all my goals. For those of you who've been listening to the show for a long period of time, you know that I set some goals at the beginning of this year. We talked about them, and they didn't work out. They didn't happen. So when that happens, it's good to look back and figure out what went wrong. Did bad things happen for good reasons? Did good things happen for bad reasons? Just so you can calibrate yourself. What actions can you take in your own life to make things better, to mitigate bad circumstances? Of course, no amount of planning is going to protect you from that random crazy thing that happens or that thing that blindsides you that you hadn't considered. But I'll tell you what, whatever does blindside you during that period of time, you're going to be very aware of it potentially being down the road. It's not something that'll probably get you a second time. And if it does end up being something that got you a second time around, that means we need to focus a little bit more on learning from the experiences that we're going through as we push through. One of the things that I notice with folks who tend to get off track, and by off track, I mean the entire gambit of stuff ranging from maybe not achieving whatever goal they set, but then also losing ground rather than gaining ground. And the first step towards this is totally taking ownership, even when it may not make sense to you. The bottom line is, no one is going to work hard to make your life better, to make your goals come true than you are. No one else is as interested in your goals as you are. So to whatever extent you can, you need to figure out what steps you can take to make those things work out better for you. Okay. And even if in your head, you feel like there's a specific individual who is negatively impacting your business, well, then that still is on you. How do you mitigate that influence? How do you eliminate that influence? How do you sever ties with that person if it really is that? And you also need to take a minute and think, is the asshole in this equation me? Just sit back and consider that possibility for a second, that you're the one that's the problem, because your solutions are going to come when you're as honest with yourself as possible. Okay. And here's the other thing. I'm one of those people who tends to maybe own this stuff too much. I'm always the first person that I will blame. Even if someone else has made a decision to take an action that negatively affects me, then I think to myself, I need to be better at evaluating other people and their motives, or spotting folks who aren't going to carry through on what they do. And one of the things that comes out of this last year for me is a lesson that, frankly, I should already know. It's one that I've had to learn before. And it's a little bit of a touchy one because, and again, for those of you who've been listening, you probably know where I'm headed with this. One of my goals was to get a certain amount of work done on my property in order to guarantee the highest dollar in the shortest period of time when I finally put it on the market. And you may also recall that my goal was to sell right around June of last year. Did not happen. Things kept getting delayed. I kept having to go with plan B on a lot of things, which ended up delaying things. And to this day, I am continuing on my own to work on some of these things. Now, And there are upsides, right? So there's a long list of things I had planned on having done by a contractor. Now, this contractor, and I don't want to, this is not me blaming the contractor for a couple of reasons. One, he's a family member. And two, it's not like I didn't realize this was probably going to happen. Now, just to give you some really basic background, I had work to do. I had a list of things I wanted to get done, and I had time when it was about this time of the year last year. Actually, I think it was even in December of 2016 when I started this conversation. And I had a list of things I wanted to do. And so I approached my brother-in-law, who's a contractor, and I said, when will you be available? Now, at the time, he was doing some work for my mother. He was adding a room to her house. And I didn't need feedback that was of the what I want to hear variety. I just needed to know, you tell me when you can start and I'll work my schedule and plans around that. Well, to cut a long story short, timings did not work. And ultimately he wasn't available until much later in the year. We're talking October timeframe. And clearly by then it was so far along and I'd done all these other things. Now here's the upside. Or here's the lessons learned, right? So what do I learn from that? Well, number one, I knew that there was a part of my brain that knew that was going to happen. Simply because I know how I've been through remodels and builds and things like that. I know the pace that things happen in the county where he's building. And I this isn't my first time at the rodeo, and I just kind of nodded my head and smiled and said, whatever he tells me is the date, I'll go with. And even when he told me the date, somewhere in the back of my head, I'm like, that's not going to happen. So that's lesson learned for me. It should have been a different scenario, in terms of me arranging for that work to get done. I did have a backup plan, and the bulk of the work I wanted to get done is now done. I'm doing some little items here and there that are just really relatively minor. So here's the upside of that. So since I decided to own a lot of those changes, I learned some stuff. Tiling. I ended up doing a lot of tiling, and I learned a couple of things. One, I'm kind of slow at tiling. And number two, I get annoyed easily when it does not work out exactly right. So I ended up tiling a portion of the kitchen, didn't go the way I wanted it to go, pulled all the tile down. I had used a method that looked easy. It was this method where you took this rolled up material that was sticky on both sides and first stuck it to the wall, then stuck the tile to that stuff, and it just didn't work. So pulled all that stuff down, went back and got myself some actual tile adhesive, and did it that way, and it came out fantastic. So I'll be putting pictures of that up soon. It's been grouted, all that other kind of wonderful stuff. So the kitchen's looking fantastic. The kitchen is the way I wanted it to be, as we discussed last year. So some skills learned, maybe a lesson learned that you need to be able to get really firm commitments and timelines, and you need to be the driver of those things. You need to make those things happen. And as soon as a schedule slips, you need to have a set in stone policy on what that means for you. If you're a right up against the wall person in terms of timelines and how things need to get done, maybe after that first slip, you need to go to a second person to provide the service, right? Granted, the complication in my situation was I wanted to work with my family member. I've seen the work he does. He does great work, but the time on it can be extended. And I was willing to do that, but my problem was just the work just never got started until far too late. But that's all done now. He did end up coming and finishing up, hooking up the cooktop and all kinds of other wonderful things that I didn't want to mess with. I didn't want to mess with the gas. I didn't want to mess with the electrical. So all that stuff is done. And as far as the rest of it goes, that's all pretty much set. I'm now on schedule to be able to sell my property within the first half of 2018. Right now, for me, it's more of a personal decision. It's a timing issue. If I move before school ends, then wherever I end up, the kids have to commute from that place to school. So there's that kind of stuff. The stuff that obviously may or may not be involved in your decision making, but is going to have an effect on what I do. And I will be continuing to try and find that sweet spot where I've got the opportunity to get the highest price in the shortest period of time, when there's the greatest demand on the part of buyers in my price range, all that kind of wonderful stuff. Now, in addition to sort of learning that, I also learned another kind of interesting lesson. And it's another one that is pretty obvious. But even someone who's been doing this as long as I have, I think needs those reminders. For those of you, again, who've been listening for a long time, know that one of my strategies, and it remains one of my strategies, is to buy a lot and build a house on it. When I sit down and do the math, I end up with a house that cost me about 30% less than what I would have paid if I bought a similar house on the market. Okay, so over the last year, I found 2 lots that came on the market that fit my criteria. Now, I had very specific criteria for the lot that I wanted to get, because it needed to meet a couple of requirements. First, it needed to meet the requirements that would accommodate the size property that I wanted to put on it. And I'm interested in a ranch style home. I don't want stairs in it. So I don't want a 2-story home. And it had to have all the stuff. It needed to have sewer, water, power right there at the curb. I didn't want something where I was going to be putting in septic tanks or having to worry about other stuff to deal with the property. And it needed to be something that would be attractive enough in terms of its location to become eventually an excellent rental, because that's ultimately what it will become after I live in it for a few years. And 2 different lots came up in 2017 that fit that bill. And I waited too long on the first one that would have not only fit the bill, but really provided an amazing view, and all the things you can't change about the property were really top notch, really top tier features, and would have been fantastic. Now, in my case, you can almost forgive it because I put in an offer after it had been on the market for about a week. And literally the day I submitted my offer, they accepted an offer from someone else. So there you go there. Also, the importance of understanding to stick to your price on things when you determined what your top end is. So let's go back to the lot example. Now, this lot that I told you about, and one of the things you should keep in mind about lots, and I see this happen frequently, when a lot ends up going into escrow, I don't usually get too bent out of shape about that if I was interested in buying it, because about 60 to 70% of the time, I usually find these lots going back on the market. For whatever reason, folks get them wrapped up, they get it into their escrow period. And the escrow period for lots tends to be a lot longer for a variety of reasons, depending on who's doing the buying. If it's a developer, not so much. But if it's an individual who's going to buy a home, build a home for themselves, tends to be a much longer escrow because you have to have people come out and measure it and do all kinds of studies and feasibility stuff and check out the appropriateness for the floor plan you want to use, all these kinds of things. And these are typically a contingency of the deal. And if you're doing a loan for this, where it's a loan that rolls all together, where the lot loan and the construction loan and ultimately the mortgage are kind of all one thing that you end up working through, that process can take a very long time. So we're talking 120 days or more for escrow to close on one of these. And typically I find that these things end up coming right back on the market. Now, the lot I mentioned that I missed out on came back on the market in 2017. It had gone off the market in early 2017, came back on the market at the end of the summer. And frankly, it was ridiculously overpriced, like by $100,000 overpriced. No matter what you had to say about its features, when you looked at other comparable lots, and there's not a lot of them, it's tough to get comparables, but there were other properties, other lots on the market at that time that were comparable in a lot of ways, and it just indicated extreme overpriced status on that particular lot. And I didn't let myself get bid up into that. Now, I did end up going into the bidding, and I submitted my offer and all the other kind of wonderful stuff. Didn't end up getting it, but I didn't feel bad about it when everything was said and done. The amount that they ended up going into escrow on was ridiculous. If to build a home on that lot at the price that it sold, you would end up with a home that would have cost you about or more than what buying a brand new home would have cost you. So it didn't make any sense. So stick in your head. Don't get freaked out. Now, the flip side of that is lots come on the market far less frequently. If you are under a time constraint, now, and I'm not, I'm ready to wait for the right lot to come along at the right price. And I've seen them come and go, so I know it can be done. But if you are someone who is in a position where you can't afford to wait, you need to figure out how far you're willing to go in order to acquire that. Now, and some of the upsides to building your own home is typically you're going to save some amount of money off of buying a brand new home. In my area, the home that I want to build on the lot I want to build it on would probably be one of those homes that would be able to sell for about $1 million. It would be a little bit above the average for my community. But that means that because you're going through all of what you're going through, you should expect to pay $700,000 all said and done for the lot and for the construction in order for that to be something that's worth the time involved. Because it's going to take 6 to 12 months for that to get done, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing stick built, that's a different number. If you're doing sort of that not the mobile home style home, but a prefab home. In California, we also call it factory-built housing. Now, this is not a mobile home. For when these things are built, once everything is said and done, they look exactly like a stick-built home. And they are, for all intents and purposes, in terms of identifying the property, they're a single-family residential home. They're not a home that needs to be identified as a special type of property. So in other words, it doesn't fall under the category of being a manufactured home, which is what a lot of folks refer to in the past as sort of the mobile home thing. And you can save money that way, and you end up with a fantastic property. I've toured homes that are prefab homes, and you wouldn't be able to tell. I mean, I've been told by the folks the status of the property, but in any case, it ends up saving you some money. So those can be great ways to get a project like that done. I've shared this with you in the past. You can go to the stream or the RSS feed for the show and check that out to see for yourself. Okay, so other things that have been going on, just to sort of bring you up to date, and some of you may have noticed this. Currently, therebelbroker.com is all messed up. The site was hacked, and whoever the hacker was using it to send out mass emails. So I'm working through that with my provider right now. So right now, I'm not going to refer you to the rebelbroker.com. The only one of my sites, the site that is continuing to work is soldbyrobert.com, which is my real estate business URL. So if you want to reach out to me, if you want to get in contact with me, that's going to be your best way to do that. Now we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll chat a little bit more and maybe even think about what things do we want to do for 2018. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right. Aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks again for choosing to spend your valuable time with me here on the very first show day of 2018. We're kind of reviewing lessons I've learned from the 2017 and maybe talk a little bit about things that are going to be coming up in 2018, things I want to achieve. Frankly, we could just rewind to the same time last year and really drop in nearly the same goals. And that's really what's on deck for my 2018. However, maybe a few other things are in there because there's also what I've been thinking in terms of what to do with this show. Now, one of my goals was to grow the show to a certain level in order for it to be self-sustaining, so that the time I spend pre-show reading articles, cranking out shows is on a paying basis. So it's actually making the time paid time for me. we haven't gotten to that point yet. You guys have been doing a great job in terms of the amount of attention you've been giving to the show. We're still doing pretty well there, but it needs to grow some more. So I'm going to count on you guys to continue to support the show and maybe let other folks know about it. And we're also going to continue to do the other perks that we've been doing for the show. We'll have to get back. I'll have to figure out some way for you guys to get the link to do the survey for the show, since the website's currently not only inaccessible to me, I cannot log into the site as an admin even at the moment. So there's a variety of things going on there. But what we can do is we'll continue to do that. We're not going to do that this month because it's really not fair that folks can't submit their name for the $50 Amazon gift card drawing, but we'll probably do one in February just to move forward with that. Also, folks who are in the Rebel Underground, you're going to start to see stuff actually coming out for those. Now, at an absolute minimum, there's going to be sort of a newsletter that comes out once per quarter. That doesn't include any extra content that I create that'll be just for you guys. It's going to be something that sort of gives you a review of the numbers, what's happening with sales, what's happening with prices and volume and the price to sales ratio, these different numbers that we can look at to give us a gauge on where the marketplace is going. Now, if you want to join the Rebel Underground, and I don't abuse the members of the Rebel Underground, even though, for instance, my site has been hacked, no one got access to the Rebel Underground list because that's not where I don't keep it there. I keep it locally on my machine. So you guys I take steps to make sure that there's as little a chance as possible that any of those kinds of things get compromised. Because I tell you, I hate getting spam, so I hate the idea of sending you spam. So my goal here is to only send folks stuff that's actually got some value, information that will actually give you decent information that you can think, wow, okay, well, we're seeing this in Robert's marketplace. Wonder what that means for my marketplace, or at least maybe get you thinking along those lines. Now, if you'd like to join the Rebel Underground, the easiest way to do that is to text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. Now, the only thing that's sort of still bouncing around in my head is whether or not to continue doing this show Monday through Friday or to make it a Monday, Wednesday, Friday affair. And I'm still thinking about that. Maybe some of you want to give some feedback. If I've sort of become your co-pilot for a commute in the mornings and you look forward to talking about the most recent real estate happenings and things that are going on in the marketplace and listening to what I have to say about guessing where things might go over the next 6 months to a year, share that with me. Let me know that's become part of your daily routine, Monday through Friday, and I can roll all that together and see if it doesn't make sense for me to keep going on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. In terms of my goals moving forward, of course, getting that home sold at an appropriate time for my boys. My son, one of the things I did over the break was drive back up to Seattle to see my son. My son's actually decided to change schools, so I had to drive up there, pick his butt up, and move him back down here. So he's now back down in the hometown area of Morgan Hill, where I live. On the way back, I got tired of seeing the same scenery so many times. So we actually went and visited Boise, Idaho, which was one of those towns that I've talked about in the past in terms of potential investment locations. Was pretty impressed with what I saw. The downtown is really brand new. In fact, with what's going on in Boise, it felt almost like we're seeing the results of a big upswing. I'm hearing an awful lot of folks in tech who are being lobbied by high-tech companies in Boise to move there. I wouldn't mind going back there again and spending more time. When I was there with my oldest, we only spent a day or two there. So there really wasn't much time to poke around. Looked at some real estate online, did a little driving around in some neighborhoods, and I really liked it. So it's definitely on my short list of potential investment locations. So the goal, as I mentioned, is to sell my place, move into another place. I don't know if that will be a rental or a place I purchase. The odds are it will either be a rental or a multi-unit property where I'll live in one of the multi-units and then work in preparation to make that next step to purchasing another property and just sort of move along that way in terms of acquiring properties. And of course, I'll take you right along for the ride. We'll do this all together, and I'll be happy to share those experiences with you as they come along. Now, in terms of other things, I still have show goals for the show. Now, last year, we did reach the goal in terms of total number of downloads and those sort of behind the scenes things that I was shooting at. And we managed to maintain that until I obviously took time off. And then obviously the numbers dropped because there just weren't shows to listen to. So what I want to do is jump right back in, get those numbers right back to where I wanted them to be, and continue to push for the show to grow. And obviously that's only going to happen, as I mentioned before, with help from you. Now, 2018, the beginning, these first months of the year should be a time for you to reflect. You should have actually already done it, to be honest. You should be reviewing your goals and what you achieved last year, figuring out what you want to achieve in 2018. And there's no problem with evolving that list, right? You can come up with a few things, some very basic things, but things that are measurable, stuff that you can accomplish within the year to get you moving, and start coming up with goals that feed that. So you could have one main goal where in order to achieve that goal, you know you should be doing X, Y, and Z each week. So for instance, you want to identify and make an offer on at least 5 different properties over the course of the year. Now, the goal should be to get a property, right? But you also want to recognize that you need to do this smartly. You shouldn't feel pressured to simply get into a transaction because your goal is to get into a transaction. Your goal should be to get into the right transaction. So what feeds that? Well, first, goal number 1, set up a search that fits the criteria for what you want to invest in, and make sure it's focused in on areas you feel comfortable investing in. Next, start driving these areas. Do drive-bys. Check these properties out. If there's other ways for you to potentially find properties. Let's say there's a specific area that you really like that you want to invest in, and you want specifically to find multi-unit properties. Very easy for you to get lists of multi-unit properties. And you're going to get the best results with multi-unit properties where the tax records go to a different address, right? The billing address for that owner is other than the multi-unit. And you're going to particularly see that in situations where the person who owns it has owned it for more than, say, 8 years. Other thing you're going to want to look for is if they're in your area, so you can do a drive-by, check and look at them. Do they need a little paint? Are they looking like they need an update? These are all things that are going to give you good information. And you can do direct mail to these folks to try to reach out and say, hey, I noticed this property. I was wondering if you're interested in selling. You don't get if you don't ask. So start that out. So that's just some examples, right? I'm throwing some examples out there. But what I want you to do is focus on goals, the smaller achievable things that potentially feed that bigger goal. And what I want you to do is get a tool that helps you track those goals. The tool I use is Google Calendar, where you can create goals, and you can schedule time for you to specifically do it. And if you skip, you've told Google Calendar where to move that goal to within your time frames ahead of time, so that it doesn't just go away. If you don't check it off as completed, it'll move it to another day and time, to the next day and time that's open compared to other things that you have going on. Great way to track your goals. If you've got another tool that works great for you, whether it's writing down on a pad and paper that's in your pocket, that's fantastic. The way to track your goals is the way that you track your goals. If you're using a tool and you forget about it, that's not the tool you need to use. You need to come up with a tool for you to track your goals that actually lets you track your goals. And everybody's different. For me, the Google Calendar thing works great. For other people, not so much. They need something else, maybe something they can hold in their hands in terms of a piece of paper or whatever. Figure out what works best for you and go with it. All right, folks. I hope we can start off 2018 on a high note, or at least really charging up that hill to reach that high note as soon as possible. I know that's what I'm shooting for, and I hope you all do the same. Thanks again for listening. I do appreciate you spending your valuable time with me. I'll talk to y'all later.